Hey people, all the angels of the Lord came upon for inspection, and little Audie knowed better came too. And after further inspection, it was found he tried to put a saddle on Sam. So did God say, I commandest not saddle Sam? Or did God say, it has been told as ought of? You done been told, Opie, don't try to put the saddle on Sam. So it wasn't his commandments, but it was in told as ought of. You've been told is what you ought to done, and the consequences, was what to the mortuary. Be in the mortuary. You lucky you didn't kill you. Ought of. It ought to have killed you. So in this video, or series of videos, it's going to take several. I'm going to teach you how to read this, and this, that are all written in this book, in the cipherese, having been written upon this Bible. So I found something that clued me to these words here, the words of the covenant, to the ancient meaning of this. And it's the most famous words ever written, and they still write these words today. And it was originally on the beginning of this covenant here, which is Allah de Abbreviate. Allah the Abbreviate. The DBRI and EVI writ. And so this is still written today, and it looks like this. The Allah Breve. The Allah Breve Jubiliso. Allah Breve. And what it means, Allah de Breve, to the short. And so this is the two different words. This is the BRI and then the EVI. And that's in Italian. In Africans, it's in all the letters. And in Spanish, there shortly. And it says that this word didn't come from the Latin. It doesn't translate in Latin. But in French, you see, it's go to the brief, the short time. A brevet is short time. We don't have a lot of time for writing, so you're going to have to abbreviate, the abbreviate. And it's used in music, and it's known as a double whole note. And it means, fast. I'll be there in a short time. It was change. It was just the sense. It was pieces of notes. It also means sent. Back in the days when there were only two types of notes, it was the quick one. A ratio of 2 to 1, double time. The smell is the scent, and it's a half or 2 to 1, represented by this part of the eye. That's coming from breve, and it's brief in every language. Short, brief. In most every language you heard of. And eva, which is a base word of time. Evo is a long period of time, evolution, the evo. And a EV, is a short time. It's where your word heavy metal come from, fast music. A evi is a period of time. Ever, to be so many years old. And so this is from the ancient language, and it's been tuned up many times. But when it was first written, it might have been read Allah de Abbreviate. But it's, a lead, L-E-E here, a lead, and a lead breve. The brave are the ones that run down there to war faster than everybody else. And so this was a lead brave writ. Allah into the fast time writ. And so it's also, a short time. And so a short time is an attitude you get when you enlisted in the Navy and you only have 30 days left. You find a chain with 30 links on it. You cut a link off every day just to show everybody, you hang it on your side. It's just something to count the days off, and so everybody can see that, no, I'm not going out there and doing that. I've only got 3 more days to be here in Vietnam. You're not going to kill me on my last day. A short timer is an attitude. It means somebody who's did all his tour. He's at the end of his tour. A lead brevet writ. A lead short timer writ. And so you better believe these are going to be some wise words. So when this word, have writ comes up, it's usually following the debris. Debris, little bitty parts. The time of writ. Little parts of the time in writ. Debris. Little bitty pieces of the time in writ. And so it means, to write a little bit every day in the journal is what this means. So when it says the words of this covenant having been written upon this scroll, that means this is a journal of time. So this is a long line, but it's pretty easy to read. And if you look in the Septuagint, you'll see that it's the beginning of a new paragraph here under the title of Josiah renews the covenant. So that's not a good sign, to renew the covenant, the short time writ. And it goes from here to the end of this chapter. So this key is just a vav. Its reading is a V, vest. And vest of inosile who's the Python stylon. The Python stylon. The P-E-P. The P-it-on stylon. The P-it-on stylon. And so it's talking about Pishu here. And he's got the P-it-on stylon. And he's also got the debris here. The dauber. And he's also carries the scent. And so this is why, the word peon. That's why the word peon in the Greek means who is behind you. The peon. And no peon is in front of you. And that's where this comes from. The peon is behind you, and everybody in front of you has no peon. All these characters over here, they don't have a peon. And you get that over here, the no peon is before you, the ones in the front. And so a vest of means in duty to the king. You're in vest of somebody. Invest and of. All the ancient Greek, when you see an O in a name, it means of. And the vest of Basilius, they say, is the king, but it's not. It's, B is in, and asile is the place you hide in, in asile whose. And so the vest of in asile whose. The P-it on styling. Oh, dude back there styling the P. You hand him your shoes and said, hey man, don't let no P get on my shoes while I'm kicking this ass. And the P is on, the style of the columns of the front porch. And that's where they're getting this column from, the style on. But it's actually coming from this word down here, the foyer, to observe. So what it's saying here is the king, is working for the dude with the P it's on style on. The vested of in the style who's the P it on style on. So it's saying, the king is working for the guy back here. The one that's behind me. You got to have some big money back, if you want to be the king. And to debt it to the death check on. You're in debt to the day you to check on the death. In Antion cure you. In a Antion, in a prevention to cure you. To upper youth not. There is no prevention, no Antion to cure you. To a upper youth, to your teenage years. Not Naya. To a upper youth Naya. In no peon, in a long, the enopeon, in a long time behind to carry out of fool as in toll as ought of. It's been a long time behind you to carry out of a fool as sent. They're playing with this word, to guard his commandments in toll as ought of. And so a guard is a fool ass. And this could just be, without the T. And the fool as C-N-2. And then it could just be, in toll as. But it's the S. The S-E-N, the cent toll as, a century, to let you know it's the guard, not just any fool ass, but the fool ass seeing to cent toll as. What of? Ought of. You go see the doctor, you tell him, I'm a warrior, I never thought I'd live this long. And doctors hate to hear that. I'd took better care of myself if I knowed I'd live this long. Don't never tell them that. You piss them off. And to the mortuary, the mortuary, and to the deaf, the mortuary ought of, what to prostagmata. That looks like the four stagmata for stagnation. And they'll say, this is an ancient word used in the Cyprian letters, and while having the force of law, the lex, not the law, but the words, the meaning of the words is the lex, the law, was not expressed as former statute. Dionysius, therefore, agrees with him in using the Greek term for decree, the forctigum. A decree is what you're forced to do, the forctigum, the forctigumata, what you're forced to do. Ought of in whole, cardia, the heart, that comes from the core, the center, dia, the center through. But actually it means the spot where your esophagus splits up, the core. And in the whole, I'm not too sure if this is whole or ole. It's like the entire, your whole life, your whole life, in ole. And this is hips, hips, HPS, hips, which host. You're old man, and you got an old heart, and old hips, which host. You fall down and break your hip, and you're not going to be able to get back up and fight. Old hips, which host, foyen. Your old hips look like a foyer. You've been riding a horse too long. And to a slogo, use this. Death check has to us. It's logo, slogo. All this comes from the same words. And the slogo, and the slogo is usually right up there with your logo. And the slogo, the death check has to sedge. To a sedge gram, men of Sepitu. The men of Sepitu. And so in the Hebrew, the men of Sepitu are the judges, the Sepitu. And so to a sedge is to look at and make the decisions. And to a sedge, a gram is the weight. And then from in of, the mino, from in of Sepitu, viable. V-I-B-L, viable. Capable of working successfully. The slogo used this. Death check has to a sedge, the weight. From in of Sepitu, viable, jot, the jot of two. And so jot means the smallest amount, iota is where that comes from. In the viable of the iota, the smallest amount with two. So a sedge is also a large family of grass-like plants, typically grown in wet ground, or it can mean, to cut, coming from the seker, to cut. And that's what these plants are representing here. This is a cesspool, and you can see the ka, and this is a pry bar, a P-R-Y, or a F-R-Y, a coffrey. The Great Pyramid of Khafre was to cover. And he's covering the nose. And cover the nose. And this represents a cesspool. And that's how you treat your water. If you're living on a septic tank and you're in a low-laying area where the ground doesn't get dry, you plant sedges on your cesspool. And you know it's a cesspool because it says it twice here. To cover the smell of the cesspool. And you see it again here. This is a fish hook. And it represents the letter X. The ancient letter X was a fish hook, the Tazadi. And this is the ancient Egyptian script that means a pool. It's the X pool. The excrement, the water that comes out, the cesspool, the X pool. So in the court of Narmer, that's what this symbol means here, in the court. And I'm not too sure they got this Narmer right. I think we get better reading on it when I read this. But it looks like they were laying down the law around the outskirts of the city about everybody fixing their cesspool so their city didn't stink. And so their slogan, was this: the date checks has to a sedge, has to a cut, the weight from in whose the mouth to viable, the giotto, the smallest bit of two. And our slogan is the death checks to a cut, the weight, the gram, from in whose the mouth to viable, the jot it to. And so this makes a lot more sense in the Hebrew. A jot is a small writing. An iota is the I, the smallest letter. And the ot is the smallest part of iota. It's the decimal. It's the little dot. And you see the old Narmer, he's wearing two different hats here. And this is called the hedget. And this is the outskirts, the hedge around the outskirts is what he's policing. And then this one here is called the deshret. And I'll go into that another movie. I figured out what that means. And so they'll call this a Narmer. And the way I see this is a parable. This is the parable. And this isn't they call it a mar as if it's a scratching tool. But it looks more like a awl, as in to pierce leather, to sew leather, and awl, and the fish awl. And yeah, he was mad that the fish in his river wasn't looking good. He was going to the outskirts of his city, and he was cleaning up the mess, getting everybody a proper septic system put in. A S-pool, an X-pool, a cesspool. And when you do this, you follow the scent. You can see where the problem is by where the smell is coming from. So behind him follow scent, debris of the little Pishu. And so Pishu is a name used for cat. It's also called the king of Babylon was Pishu. And it's also a name for your slippers that you put on at night. You take a cat and skin it and turn inside out and sew up some little shoes. Those are pea shoes, you step on the cat. The warm slippers to wear at night. But it's also a word used for something that stinks. Pea shoe, and the scent of the debris of the little smell is what follow. And so vest of in a style, who's the peodon stylon. And so a stylon is also, a stylus is what you use to write with. And that's what it was talking about down here, and the pi to viable, the jot of, is little bitty writings. And the death it to the date to check in against, in antion, in against on the cure you, in an antion cure you, fix your septic tanks before you get sick. In the antion cure you to, for euthanasia, in the same place where your euthanasia come from. It can be youth or it can be death. And for youth and not behind you. In youth and not in front of you. In no behind you, not behind you. and there's no youth in front of you at the end of your life getting old. And to carry out of the fool as sin. They had the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the Foolices, was the guards. And this is also the pool of ass to see in. The pool of ass, your cesspool. It as in toll as ought of. It as in the fool as seeing is in toll as ought of. The pool as seeing it as in toll as ought of. What to the death, what to marchery, ought of, what to the for stagmata, the for the stagnant, the matter of the for stag, ought of in whole heart, in whole cardia. And so a cardia isn't actually a heart, it's this little spot where the food enters into the stomach. And they're getting this testimonies from the death, as we run clinical trials, and the testimonies come from all the stacks of dead people. Well, that's not going to work out. And so the testimonies are these 10 people who are dead over here. And you can't see it, but they got their head cut off, their arms tied, and they got their dick cut off, and their dick's tied onto their head. And, dick is the command, the dictation. The 10 Commandments is what this is. And to the mortuary ought of, what up for stagmata ought of. In whole cardia, when old hips which hosts foyen. Foyen, a foyer is this part out there on your porch, that's open so you can observe people coming in. To us logo, to us logos, to us writings, to us logo. Who is this? The day at Chequez, to a sedge. The gram, the little weight from in who's sepit to. The septic tank, the sepit to, the judge. You can tell by the types of grasses growing how your pond is doing. And the sepit to viable, and the jot to, and to the little, to jot down a little writing, what to. So in the other Septuagint, it looks like this. It's written a little bit different. The words are in different places, a little bit of different spelling, and all these directional markings. So I didn't figure all this out just by reading this. I had to read both of them, the Septuagint and a whole paragraph, and both different readings to it. But the biggest help was in the Hebrew. I always get the Hebrew better. And it's honoring the Pishu here. And the Pishu was the writer. And the loss what at the debris of the little pieces, ever it the sight of is. Whatever it the sight of is. Whatever you saw, all has cipher ease. He writes this up quick. And it's not just the way you think of writing, because he's got to put this all in poetry for the king, and not just, write what he sees or what he hears, but he has to figure out a way to write it so he can add all these little jots and make this read 3, 4, 5, 6 different times. I don't know, at least 4. It reads different ways and gives you more information every time. And so I got most of that information from reading this Hebrew. But this program's slowing down here. So I'm going to cut this off, and I'll put a couple more parts to this movie and read the Hebrew and compare the Hebrew to the Narmer palette some more. And then I'll read that Narmer palette. And so I just don't read this. What I do is I find writings in the Bible, and they remind me of pictures. And then I go search for these old pictures and match them up. And that's how I figure out how to read this ancient writing. But I'm going to cut this off here. Have a good day.